Carter McCollum. All in favor of adoption of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Very good. We have meeting minutes. Seeing no old business, we'll move to new business. First petition is petition COA 22-28, presented by John Sanchez Bianchi as owner, applying for a certificate of appropriateness for Columbia County parcel 1277400, located in the view shed of the Lake Isabella National Historic District as provisioned in LDR Article 10. Do we have anyone to speak on behalf of this petition? All right, just one moment. Mr. Robert, would you care to come forward and explain this for the benefit of the group before the proponent takes the podium?
All right, this petition is COA 22-28, located at the address of 219 Southeast Hernando Ave. The proposed permit is for replacing part of the metal roof that's existing there, and then also replacing the windows on the front of the exterior building.
Please approach. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to the best of your knowledge that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very nice. Name and legal address of record. Mr. Angelo, please.
John Sanchez Bianchi, 219 Southeast Orlando Avenue, Bay City, Florida, 32029.
Very nice. Please explain what you'd like to accomplish this evening.
There's a Florida room in the front of the property where there was damage that a tree limb fell down and it's been leaking really bad. So I need to change that with some flat fiberglass roofing and also replace the windows because they're not very good and they're old and they let all the air and coldness in. That's it.
Nice. And taking a look at the photographs you provided and the specifications of the windows that you would like to get approved to put into the front of that structure, it actually looks like you're kind of turning the clock back on the place, going for a more traditional, more original looking style of window than what's in there.
The windows that are there now are a little bit too large for the house itself. So I wanted to match the windows on the right-hand side of the house so it'll be more historically appropriate.
Well, sir, that is the kind of thing we like seeing here.
Thank you.
You had mentioned a fiberglass roofing product for the Florida room.
Because I have the specs here and I didn't attach them to the file.
The coloration and the roof lines aren't going to change, however?
No.
And will the existing metal surface be coming up before this is installed, or will this be going down over the existing?
The metal's going to be taken out and then there's damage in the wood, which I'm sure there is, that's where the water's leaking. All that will have to be replaced. And then the fiberglass roofing will be put on top of that.
And you said you had specs on the proposed product to be used on the roof. Do you have a photograph by any chance?
Yes, sir.
If you'd like to hand it to Mr. Angelo, he can circulate it to members of the board. Was that mic not on the whole meeting?
Sorry.
Oh man, we got to do it all again.
This mic over here will pick them up, it's just not as loud.
When was the house built?
On 1920,
So the fiberglass project that you're proposing, it's a rollout product?
yes, sir.
Rollout well, that was a product in use in the 1920s.
Plus, you can see it from the road. It's sort of like a flat roof over the floor of the room. So it's not visually change anything regarding the historic point.
And we'll just wait a moment while these specs make it down to the end of the rostrum.
No problem.
You take these back?
Sure.
All right, so at this time, everyone's had the opportunity to take a look at the additional specifications of the materials that the proponent would like to use. Are there any additional questions from the board to the proponent?
No.
Seeing none, at this time, you may be seated.
Oh, thank you.
At this time, is there anyone else in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition COA 22-28 as presented to us by the proponent? Seeing none at this time, public comment on this petition is closed. Discussion amongst members of the board and the city.
City doesn't have a problem with any of the materials, or looks good to me.
Looks good.
I mean, ideally, we'd want to see probably a metal product going down just because it conforms with the existing roof that's there. But this being a addition onto the structure, if the structure dates to the 20s, even if the addition was from, say, the 30s, I mean, this sort of textured rollout product was available back during that time period. It would not be uncommon to see that on one of these structures. Conformity would be ideal, but I don't see how this violates any of our design guidelines. And we'll kind of go into a little bit of this more in depth during workshop, but I think this is in conformance. Any other discussion?
Yeah, what it is replacing is perfectly flat, right, anyway.
Correct.
You
Right.
can't see any roof from the street.
Motion to approve COA 22-28.
Second motion.
It's going to be Carter and Nelson on the second. All in favor of approval for COA 22-28, please call the roll, Mr. Angelo.
Ms. McCollum,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Mann,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
and Mr. Lydic.
Yay. All right, 22-28 is approved unanimously. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much.
Next item of new business, petition COA 22-30, presented by Jason Lang as owner and/or Robert Ogles acting as agent, applying for a certificate of appropriateness for Columbia County parcel 127600000, located in the viewshed of the Lake Isabella National Historic District as provisioned in LDR Article 10. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of petition COA 22-30? Who do we have in the rear that just walked in?
I'm sorry, the late Robert Ogles.
Oh, man.
Oh, man, we almost tabled your motion. Come
That's
on.
perfect timing.
Just have a seat next to the podium for the time being. Mr. Angelo, would you care to approach and brief us on this petition on behalf of the city?
I mean, that was timing.
That's serendipity right there.
Karma.
And I've been early to all of these. I just about missed this one.
All right, this one is for COA 22-30, and then the address for this one is 180 Southwest St. John's Street. They will be installing a new metal roof over an existing shingle roof, and that the insurance company is requiring a new roof.
Hold on for just one moment. All right, please approach. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony that you are about to give this evening is to the best of your knowledge, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very nice. Name and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo, please.
Robert Ogles, 50, well, my home address, so I'll do 103994, 104th Street, Live Oak, Florida, 32060.
Very nice. Please explain to us what you'd care to accomplish this evening.
Yeah, I would like to, I think some pictures may have been already provided to you guys.
Some, yes.
And just to show you the material that we're gonna use would be the ultra rib metal. And they're picking the copper color, which does have, the house in front of her has the same type of roof, looks like it'd been installed in the last few years. So that's the identical roof. And there's many other ones on St. John Street right there. About half of them are the same style metal, just different colors. So we're looking for approval.
It's the same color as the one in the picture here, the yellow house here on the corner.
And I didn't bring my pictures with me, sorry. Could I, okay. Yes, that's right.
Right down the street, yeah.
Yep. That's the same style and color.
And the current roof is shingles.
It is.
Asphalt shingles?
It is asphalt, yes.
And just for the record, so we have it read in, this would be the metallic copper color illustrated on the Tri-County Metals handout, selection SR48E85?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, does anyone else have any questions or discussion for the proponent?
No, I think the style of roof brings it into some uniformity, and certainly a metal roof would be more appropriate than the shingle for the historical aspect of it, so.
By any chance, do you know if there's already some metal under those shingles?
Yes, I do know, and no, there's not.
Okay.
Yes, because we have to check for layers also,
Gotcha.
so I wanted to see. There's one layer of shingles over top of the wood decking.
Okay.
But no, that's a good question.
Does it
All right.
have the appearance that that wood decking postdates the construction of the building as if the entire roof, including the sheeting, had been replaced at some point in its lifetime?
It has, yes.
Yeah.
It used to have like a tongue and groove or just a one-by style decking, and they've got plywood on it now.
Copy that. Anything else for the proponent? You may be seated.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have anyone else in attendance that would care to speak either for or against petition COA 22-30 as presented by agent acting on behalf of owner? This time seeing none, public comment on this petition is closed. Discussion amongst members of the board. I love seeing this kind of stuff. This is exactly, the sort of recommended treatment that some of these historic structures are recommended to have based on some of our design guidelines.
Looks nice, and it does, it drove through there, it's the same kind of roof throughout the neighborhood, so it just brings it more into uniformity.
And I believe, don't we also have a recent copper roof over 3 or 4 blocks east, either on Nassau or also perhaps on St. John's?
I believe it's
On
on
the large front yard there on the north side of Lake Isabella?
Yep. Looks real pretty.
Looks real pretty,
That's
okay?
Motion to approve petition COA 22-30.
We have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Angelo, please call the roll.
Ms. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidy?
Yay. Very good, the vote is unanimous. Petition COA 22-30 is approved.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations, go put some copper on that old historic structure.
And I very much apologize being late here, so thank you guys for that.
You made it just in
Just
time.
called it.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Angelo.
All right, there being no additional new business at this time, we'll move on to the consent agenda comprised of issues that were determined to be minor projects that were determined to be eligible for a COA by city departments and not necessary to be heard in general hearing. Mr. Angelo, would you please come up and tell us about COA 22-26 and 22-27?
All right, so COA 22-26 is for 444 Southeast Monroe Street. They are replacing the existing shingle roof with a new shingle roof. Very similar color and everything, and that for the project. And so being same materials and everything, and that you'll be able to see in the pictures, some of the neighboring houses also have shingles on it also.
All right, now this one on, this is the one on Monroe?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be one of those structures that would be non-conforming for the neighborhood to start with, so.
Correct.
Being that it's not a individually or a contributing element listed of the district, we have some latitude, but yeah, I can see how that ended up on the consent agenda. And the next one?
All right, next one is COA 22-27. That one is for 433 Southeast Camp Street. They are replacing the existing metal roof with a new metal roof. They went with, originally had the Ultra rib galvalume roof on there, and that's what they are replacing it with, is a Ultra rib galvalume also.
So this is a complete like and kind replacement then? All right, also for the consent, that is a minor thing. All right, any additional discussion from the board? Do we have a motion to go ahead and ratify the consent agenda?
Motion to ratify the consent agenda 22-26 and 22-27.
All right, that'll be Mr. Carter with the motion
I'll second.
and Mr. McMahon with the second. All in favor of ratifying the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Very good, all right. Keep up the good work. All right, at this time, we have two workshop items. It was asked at our last session, since we are seeing a number of these roofing projects and minor items moving on to the consent agenda, it was the consensus of the members of the board that we could have a workshop discussion about the issues in LDR 10.11 as it pertains to minor, major, and basic upkeep, and also a discussion about roof replacements as it relates to the fact that, as Mr. Carter indicated, insurance companies are beginning to compel some of our owners in the historic district to take replacement action on some of their historic structures. I'm gonna go ahead and take the podium. I have some exhibits for you. If you have a digital copy of your LDRs on your digital pads, it might be smart to go ahead and pull those PDFs up.
I don't think I do.
All right, you got me on volume? All right, we're on. We'll go ahead and leave exhibit 0 up for the time being today. As I mentioned, we're gonna be discussing Article 10, Section 11, Parts 1 through 6 of our LDRs as it relates to regular maintenance, minor work, and major work insofar as this is gonna play into the requirements for the issuance of a COA. I'm not going to read all of this material to you verbatim. We will have it up on the screen for reference. If you can you scroll down to Section 10.11. All right, so here's where we begin. On this particular section, as I mentioned, we're only going to be discussing Section 11, Parts 1 through 6. We're gonna try to get you out of here pretty quick and we'll cover some of this other stuff later. So this section deals with the approval of changes to our landmarks and our landmark sites. Landmark is a site is a word you're gonna see used throughout these LDRs in addition to sites, districts, et cetera. For the most part, these are synonymous, even though they are not listed as National Historic Landmarks, NHL, which is a totally different class of protection level. The term landmark is used intermittently. Where you see that, read into it historic structure or historic site. So let's go to Exhibit 1. There we go. We're all familiar with this. This was given to you in digital format for your pads for reference. I think some of you may have actually seen this in hard copy. These are the newly adopted limits of the Lake Isabella Commercial Historic District as listed by the Florida Master Site File and the National Register of Historic Places. Next exhibit. Again, this should be no surprise. This is our second major cluster of historic sites, aka landmark sites. This is the Lake Isabella Historic Residential District. These are the newly adopted boundaries as proposed and adopted by the Florida Master Site File of the Division of Historic Resources, as well as the National Register of Historic Places. So let's go back to Exhibit 0 for a minute. And we're going to start with Section 10.11.1. This is what this section of the workshop is going to focus on before we transition into roofing. Here you see them laid out there in bulleted form. Items 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 major categories that all changes to or alterations to National Historic Districts or individually listed sites are going to fall under. That's your routine maintenance, your minor work, and your major work. Moving down to the next portion of that, 10.11.2, design guidelines. As you're reading through various parts of Section 10 or Article 10, Section 11, pay attention to where the term design guidelines is used. You'll always see it capital D, capital G. These are the legally defined guidelines that are being cited by reference. And as we learned from our discussions with Mr. Flagg, where you see these particular documents being referenced, cited by reference, we as a board, I'm not saying you need to be able to quote this chapter, title, and verse, but you should all at least be familiar with some portions of these design guidelines or have a PDF of them on your pad so that you can reference them. In addition to, the very first one listed there are land development regulations. That's the document you are all looking at right now. The second one on there carries very similar weight and equal weight to our LDRs. That being the United States Department of Interior, SOI, or Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation and the guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings. This time, can we get Exhibit 3 up on the board? So these are the standards for treatment with the guidelines for rehabilitating. We touched on these, 3 months ago at a previous workshop session. If we could, please scroll to page 113 of this document. And if you want, I think you can use in the upper left corner, you may be able to just type in 113. For example, windows, storefronts. We covered this before. These are recommended versus non-recommended treatments. Now, these guidelines, these are non-regulatory. They are couched in the form of recommended versus non-recommended treatments. This is where you have the ability as members of the board to do some horse trading. For example, the rollout product that they wanted to put on the Florida room edition of the historic structure that had metal over the remainder of the structure. While it may not be an ideally recommended treatment, It is a product that was common to the time period, especially considering that that addition postdates the original construction of the residence. So in these sections, we have the ability to do some horse trading. Can you please go to page 76? And I think it's gonna be page 7. Yeah, you're gonna have to scroll down a bit. There we go. All right, so these are standards. As discussed at the beginning of every section, whether it be the section on preservation, the section on rehabilitation, or the section on restoration, these are the standards. Now, these are actually all listed in our LDRs in a different section where we have adopted these standards for rehabilitation. Now, this has the more regulatory language in it. This one, for example, number 1 there, if you can't see it, a property will be used as it was historically or be given a new one that requires minimal change to its distinctive materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships. Here in standards, you'll see will, shall, etc. But back in the guidelines, that's where you see recommended, not recommended. Let's go back to exhibit 0. Third document on here, Florida Building Code, Existing Buildings, Chapter 12, Historic Buildings. If we can bring up exhibit 4. So it is a new edition, and no doubt following this hurricane season, we will be seeing an 8th edition coming out probably very soon. If we can go down, we'll just scroll through this. It's not many pages. You see here, let's go down a little bit more. Okay, I've highlighted some things in here. Just like what we have in our LDRs, properties are either individually listed, they're part of a district, they've been identified at a less than national level, either on a city historic register, a county historic register, or merely with a state designation. And then you have a catch-all down at the bottom in item 4. Anything that has been determined eligible by the Florida State Historic Preservation Officer for listing on the National Register, it needs to be taken into account even if the action of formally listing that site on the register has not yet taken place. Once the State Historic Preservation Officer in the Division of Historic Resources in Tallahassee makes the official designation that this is an eligible property to be listed, it needs to be taken into account as if it had actually been listed. So we're going to go down a little bit more. The language in Chapter 12 is relatively brief. It's one of the shorter sections of Florida Building Code, but it does have some very powerful language in it. For example, you'll see item 6 here that we've highlighted. Repairs, alterations, restorations, changes, additions, etc. They are all going by the guidelines set forth in that SOI standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings. That's the document we had just looked at. That's the one that our LDRs also cites by reference. So even in Florida Building Code, while it doesn't have a 75-page long section describing what actions can and cannot be taken according to building code, it references this document that hopefully soon we will all already be familiar with. You can continue scrolling down. All right, and here is my favorite language in the entire big, thick book of the existing building volume for Florida Building Code. 1205.1, strict compliance. Historic structures or portions of such structures that do not strictly comply with this code shall be considered to be in compliance if it can be shown to the satisfaction of the building code official that equivalent protection has been provided and that no hazard will be created or continued through noncompliance. This one set of lines right here gives the Department of Growth Management and we're still using a county code official, right? Okay, we have our own now. Okay, so it gives an enormous amount of authority to the code official of signatory record to take a look at the totality of what's being proposed for a historic structure and say that while, in their opinion, this does not come into strict compliance, it is substantial compliance enough that it is acceptable. For example, a historic wooden balustrade that may only be 31 inches high instead of being, 33 and a half or something. So provided that in the opinion of the local code official, continued non-compliance or only substantial compliance continues, provided that doesn't create a public safety hazard or a threat to public health, life, or safety, they have the ability to also do some horse trading with us. So
When
one
you
of the,
say horse trading, you mean consider it in compliance?
correct, consider it to be in compliance, even though it is not strictly compliant, but it is substantially compliant. Like I said, this is a very, very, very powerful power that Chapter 12 is giving to our village officials. And it's referenced by citation here in our own LDRs.
What do you mean by equivalent protection?
Excuse me?
What do you mean by equivalent protection?
Well, for example, let's go back to the balustrade example. I've seen this time and time
I don't know
again.
what balustrade is.
Handrail?
Wooden handrail on an old staircase.
He likes using fancy words.
So for example, you're a graduate of University of Florida, right?
Excuse me?
But where,
I went to the Florida State University.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought I had you at the other one. Okay, well, for example, I've seen some structures like this at Florida State University as well.
No excuse for you.
I'm listening.
And it's been recorded for posterity. For example, when you go into some of the older, more historic structures that are present there on the campus,
Okay.
and you see that certain doorways, or to use the balustrade example, like at Ruby Diamond Auditorium, where you have the metal railing that's been bolted into the top of the 31-inch railing, just so that it is brought up to what the modern building code says. Well, in actuality, if the local code official wanted to say that, there's no additional hazard being created through the continued non-compliance, you can go with a architectural feature that has historic integrity that may not meet the full letter of anything else in the Florida building code. That's what they're referring to by that. Now, equivalent protection would be that, that there's not been introduced into the situation any more of an unsafe environment.
Okay.
Let's throw Exhibit 0 back up again.
Just a quick question on that before you leave. That really is extremely broad.
Yes,
I mean-
intentionally broad.
Right. To the point that what wouldn't fall under that as far as being possibly considered okay regardless of, it seems like you could apply that to anything.
Well, there are certain issues in regards to fire safety, earthquake safety, things dealing with catastrophic issues.
Well,
That-
hurricane safe.
Well, most of the stuff that we deal with here is cosmetic.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was saying, that feels like you could apply that.
Another example, your predecessor over at Growth Management during the project to restore certain interior spaces in the Blanche. Had he enforced strict compliance, a lot of the historic elements of that structure would have had to have been removed and replaced with modern alternatives that may not be like in kind. Whether it be for doors, whether it be for transoms, whether it be for the stairwell itself. But this gives individuals over at Growth Management a great deal of latitude in terms of what is and is not compliant as it relates to Florida Building Code. So let's go back to Exhibit 0. All right, For example, you were saying what isn't covered by this broad language. Here you see item number 4, National Fire Protection Association, National Fire Protection Association 914 code for fire protection of historic structures. This is going to be, and I don't have a copy of this document pulled up for you to review, but this would be the sort of superseding guidelines.
And whatever current fire protection guidelines are is what must be strictly adhered to, right? Is that what that would mean?
Unless the code official is willing to say that such continued noncompliance would not constitute a hazard to public life, health, or safety.
Sure. Which it probably
Which is a pretty tall bar to.
Because they're all ancient pine structures. Yeah.
Yes, they're all built out of lighter pine. You are 100% correct. All right, so next section 10-11-3. This just goes into a brief description of what the routine maintenance, the minor work, and the major work are. A couple things I want to just highlight here. At the end of this first paragraph, you will see at the discretion of the land development administrator, an application for routine maintenance may be forwarded to the HPA if the work is questionable as to whether it is consistent with the design guidelines. See how design guidelines, capital D, capital G, that is referring to those 4 documents that I just brought to your attention there. So let's move down to the next page under minor work. Again, you will see, wait, go back up. Okay, top of the page, paragraph beginning with minor work. Halfway through the paragraph, again, you will see if the land development administrator does not approve the application or if the work is questionable as to whether it is consistent with design guidelines, application will be heard at the next HPA. Again, design guidelines, capital D, capital G. Those 4 guideline documents that, or 3 guideline documents that in addition to the language in our LDRs, that's what we're looking for, not only as this board, but before stuff comes to our board, that's the kind of stuff that city administrators are poring over to figure out, does this go consent? Does this go full board? Is this just routine maintenance? Next paragraph there, major work projects shall be reviewed by the HPA. Shall. Remember what Mr. Flagg said? Whenever you see shall or will, always stop and scratch your head. That's one of those red flag words. That means any major work project shall be reviewed. That is a legally imbued term there. 10.11.4, routine maintenance. First sentence there, routine maintenance may require a certificate of appropriateness. I'm not going to read to you all of the 19 bulleted points that come after these couple of paragraphs here.
Come on. I'm kidding. I was joking.
We're at 20 after 6. Heck, I've already run off our acting here.
Don't act like you wouldn't love to read this stuff all night with us.
Hey. All right, so second sentence of that second paragraph right there. Such projects include any repair where no change is made to the appearance of the structure or the site. Getting into these 19 points, one thing I want to draw your attention to is that you will see the use of the word and as opposed to the word or in 7 of the 19 following points here. Bullet point 2. You'll see that last clause there in referencing wood and cast iron fences. As long as the repair matches the original in location, material, size, shape, and color. Moving down to item 3, matches the original or existing materials in detail and color. Last clause of number 4, matches the original or existing materials in detail and color, etc., etc. I'm not going to go through all these 19 points, but you will see the term matches and you will see the term and. It's not dimension, detail, color, texture, or materials. It's dimension, detail, color, texture, and materials. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier when we were deliberating one of the COAs, and we asked to see what the proposed product to be used was going to be for the rollout product. This is why it is so critical as part of the COA application process, or when homeowners or business owners are approaching growth management to say, hey, does this trigger a COA? Does this trigger a building permit? Does this trigger this? How much do I need to open my wallet here? The photographs of the existing conditions and the material to be used, that is why they are so critical. I mean, let's face it, how easy is it to approve something when we have a good, robust package where the owner, the proponent, or the agent acting on behalf of the proponent has, 20 photographs lined up in there ready for us to go that they have submitted with their application package for Mr. Angelo to be able to, just say, okay, check, check, check. Yep, this goes on consent. Or, whoa, this goes to HPA. Sort of move down to 10, decimal 11, decimal 5. I'll let you read all those 19 bulleted points at your leisure. Here we get in the very first sentence. Minor work projects require an application and an issuance of a COA. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to come before the board, because as we see from the consent agenda, minor work that falls under the rubric of what's presented here in 10, decimal 11, decimal 5, anything that falls under these categories is delegated authority for a provisional COA to be issued. Now remember, just because something goes on the consent agenda does not mean it's not getting a COA. It just means that provisionally, because it meets the standards of being a minor work, it gets approved at the city level. They get to expedite their process, and then we then come back, look at it, and ratify it. And as we've seen sometimes in the past, sometimes we look at an item and say, well, in the future, maybe projects like this should come up to the HPA because of, this factor, why is there a modern agricultural gate on what ordinarily was designed to, be made to look like an old cast iron fence to match some of the architecture in town. Not that I'm calling anyone out. Last sentence of that first paragraph. Minor work projects are not considered to have a material effect on neighboring properties. Therefore, the city does not require that adjacent property owners be notified. The interpretation of this clause in here would be that therefore, any proposed undertaking that has a material effect or has a adverse effect or a potential for an adverse effect on other surrounding owners would automatically trigger it as being a major project. One of the examples that we were wargaming out over the phone when we were talking about, does something go to the consent agenda, does something go to HPA? I have, there's language in here regarding solar panels saying that it is a minor action, provided it is on the rear non-visible side of a structure. Well, I've wanted solar panels on portions of the historic structures on my property for a while, and I have that carriage house and 3 city lots. I front onto Camp and I back up all the way to Brown. If I was to put solar panels on the, quote, rear of my residence, now, because I have a full pass-through lot, I could be causing an adverse effect to whoever is right behind me that those panels are now facing. So there is some judgment call to be made about, where it says here, are not considered to have a material effect. If my rear neighbor is staring at solar panels 10 feet away from their mailbox, that could be an adverse effect. Last sentence in the next paragraph, land development administrator does not have the authority to deny a COA or to approve an after-the-fact COA. We've seen that a number of times where Mr. Angelo has caught something that was coming in after the fact, and even though it might be a minor project, they went ahead and did it, didn't talk to the city, didn't pull a building permit, sure didn't pull a COA. At that point, something has happened where they've done, work outside of our LDRs, our municipal code, And at that point, Robert's hands are tied. And he has to tell them, okay, well, even though this was minor work that you did, now it has to go in front of the whole board because you did it without a permit and you did it without a COA. So sometimes we may see projects that ordinarily would be on minor, but
That's when we have to issue a stop order.
yeah,
Yeah, I was about to say, what happens in those cases? Like, for instance, when a company or government body or whatever, paves over a historic brick road.
That's a great example.
It is, but like, what is the recourse? I mean, obviously it should have come here.
by the letter of what's in Article 10, because that work was not done under a COA, and there was no ability for anyone to weigh in, either the city administrator or for him to pass it up towards the board. Had a member of, the growth management department seen that taking place, they would legally have been within their right to issue a stop work order.
Now, after it's done, what sort of recourse is there? Because, I mean, we're not Charleston necessarily, but that brick road was one of the jewels in our little historic area, I would say, because from a visual standpoint, like, that really should, I mean, it seems to me like that really should have happened, or certainly shouldn't have happened without approval from this board. I've been curious about that since I joined.
Yeah, that is a sticky wicket and one that has caused many residents to blow up Miss Mavis's phone, my phone. I'm sure you got a ton of phone calls on that, especially when the newspaper article came out. That was an issue where, between the board, the department, and the city decision makers, somewhere the ball got dropped and there was not clear lines of communication so that all of the moving parts knew what the other moving parts were doing.
Sure. Someone said, they're not looking, hurry, pave this thing tonight.
Pardon me?
Someone said, they're not looking, hurry, pave it tonight. Yeah.
So again, I'm not going to read through all of these bullet points, but let's scroll down through minor work. I'll draw your attention to a couple of things. Let's look at bullet point number 4. Again, light fixtures affixed to a structure that are in keeping with the neighborhood and in compliance with, there it is again, capital D, capital G, design guidelines. That takes you back to those SOI recommended versus non-recommended treatments. Here, unlike the section on routine maintenance, you will see several places where it says, replacement matches the original. Materials compatible with era and neighborhood. Meet the era and neighborhood. Meet the design guidelines there at number 9. Number 11, that last clause in there, not visible from the street. Number 12, meets the standards of the design guidelines. Look, that's in reference to temporary and permanent signage. How many times have we seen proposed signage come before HPA for a certificate of appropriateness? In theory, provided that it meets with the standards of the design guideline and Mr. Angelo is satisfied that, it matches the recommended versus non-recommended treatments in that SOI, he has the ability to prove that. It's only when it doesn't match in that character that usually he'll kick it up to the board instead of the consent agenda taking it. Item 14, compatible or similar to the original. Number 15, compatible or similar to the original. Number 19, no change to the original design. 20, compatible to the style, material, size, and color. These are the guidelines. So, let's say that replacement of doors and windows was being proposed for a historic structure, a historic storefront. Provided the replacement of these doors and windows was compatible to the style, the material, the size, and the color of what was previously there, that's the kind of thing that can go on the consent agenda. But again, you have to compare it against the recommended versus non-recommended treatments in the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines. Here I have a note here again. You can see why inclusion of photographs is so important. You know, if Robert's only sent up a package that has, you know, one picture of the front and, you know, a grainy Xerox of, oh yeah, here's the material I want to use, and it's, you know, hand drawn, you know, and I want a window here and I want the roof to, you know, have this line. Unless he can get a request for more information through to the owner, perhaps something like that, even though they may be able to accomplish this with all of the consistencies to the historic character, integrity, and theme of the neighborhood, his hands may be tied, he may have to kick it up to us just because there's not enough information. Let's move down to the final section, being 10.11.6, major work. All right, remember the language from section 10.11.3, major work projects shall be reviewed by HPA. These are all the big dogs. These are all the things that are coming to us. All of these will require a COA by the HPA. Major work requires that all property owners within 300 feet be notified by certified mail by the applicant, not by city departments, and that proof of the receipt of these notices be submitted as part of the application. Have we been enforcing this? Is there any desire on the part of council to begin enforcing this?
I will work with the council and see how they work.
I mean, I know we're taking baby steps. This don't have to be done by next meeting, but
No, yeah, it's something we definitely need to work on, and then how we want to approach that.
So here you see how many items we got in this one. Again, 19 different items. Major works include, but are not limited to the following. Again, I'm not going to read through every one, but I am going to draw your attention to certain items. Number 7, resurfacing buildings with materials not compatible or similar to the original material. That will automatically trigger a COA process under major work and will come to us. New roof coverings or replacement roofing that is not consistent with the era or neighborhood. Number 10, all installation of metal roofs not consistent with the era or neighborhood. 11, replacement or new installation of windows and doors that are not compatible with the existing or original windows and or doors. And then number 12, replacement of architectural details when there will be a change in the design or materials from the original or existing details. So pretty much this is for substantive alteration to the exterior facing portions of a designated structure, district, or other form of landmark site. There's a few other items in here that we're not gonna go into too much, but I'm gonna transition now to the second half of what our workshop is gonna be about. Trying to get out of here if we can. So let's talk about roofing. We mentioned insurance companies are compelling our property owners in historic districts. They either need to repair or replace roofs to maintain coverage. Oftentimes, these property owners are electing for replacement over repair. Makes sense. If you've already got the crew there and mobilized, why just, you know, do minor repair, especially when the insurance company is saying we need to see a replacement.
Yep.
In certain cases, modern shingle structures are, as we can see, returning to metallic roofing material and character. You know, this effect is beneficial from a historic preservation standpoint. We're actually turning back the clock and restoring some of the historic architectural features, materials, colors back into some of these neighborhoods. And that's a good thing, and citizens are, you know, should be congratulated on that. Let's go to Exhibit 3, and this will be page 100. There we are. So, for example, they're under recommended, that third box down. I know you guys can't read it from the rostrum, so I'll go ahead and read it. Says right here in the standards and guidelines, replacing an incompatible roof covering or any deteriorated non-historic roof covering with historically accurate roofing materials, if known, or another material that is compatible to the historic character of the building. This is exactly what we just saw with that last petition where metal was going up over what had been a replacement shingle roof to a structure that very likely
Used
was
to have
originally constructed with a
10
metal roof.
tiles or something.
This is the sort of stuff that we should be encouraging homeowners to do as part of, what the insurance companies are doing, sticking it to them in this regard. So where we have sheet-based metal roofing product and is being replaced with like-in-kind material, the effect is likewise beneficial from a historic preservation standpoint because there has been no adverse effect to what's going on. So let's move to, let's stay on this page right here. Right there under recommended, first box, replacing in kind an entire roof covering or feature that is too deteriorated to repair. That is a recommended treatment. So even though perhaps the Galvalume that the individual recommended, it may not be ideal, but if that structure already had it on there, replacing with like in kind is not constituting an adverse effect. So now we get into the situation where historic roofing material is being replaced with material that is not like in kind. Now you have the potential to introduce an adverse effect to certain other historic property owners within some of these districts. It's not consistent with the era and it's not consistent with the neighborhood as we saw under what would constitute a major act. So let's look over here at not recommended treatments. That first box, second sentence, not recommended, using a substitute material for the replacement that does not convey the same appearance of the roof covering or the surviving components of the roof feature, or that is physically or chemically incompatible. Then we go down to the very bottom under not recommended. Introducing a new roofing feature that is incompatible in size, scale, material, or color. These would be the not recommended treatments under material that is not like in kind. Let's go to page 98. Yep, that's the one. Recommended versus non-recommended. Recommended. Identifying, retaining, preserving roofs and their functional and decorative features that are important in defining the overall historic character of the building, et cetera, including materials such as slate, wood, clay, tile, metal, rolled roofing product, or asphalt shingles, their size, color, and patterning. Not recommended. There at the top, right under not recommended. Removing or substantially changing roofs, which are important in defining the overall historic characteristics of the building so that as a result, its character is diminished. Removing a major portion of historic roof or roofing material that is repairable, then rebuilding it with new material to achieve a more quote-unquote uniform or improved appearance.
Curious, just because this has come up a good bit just since I've been on the board since April. So as a result, the character is diminished. Diminished feels like a real subjective term, right? So for instance,
This is in reference, and there should be an extra word in there. The historic character is diminished. So yes, it may still have a metal roof on it, but instead of it being, for example.
100-year-old 10 tiles is new Galvalume.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, that's what I was gonna say, because then,
Diminishing effect on the historic character of that architectural feature.
so, because, and this is something I've noticed, I've read a little bit about it, and I know you literally have this roof on your house, so it seems to me that replacing these historic 10 tiles with something that looks like them could be,
They have reproduction materials.
I know, but it does seem to be prohibitively expensive when compared to like your standard, what do you call it?
Well, instead of the individual tiles, I think
Rib.
they come in prefab sections.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But those are, some of the ones I saw online look like 3 times as much as your Galvalume, for instance.
Might be.
Yeah.
Also, the thing you need to realize is when those tiles come off, because there is no undersheeting.
Mhm.
They are directly connected to purlins and rafters. The extra cost of redoing the tin tiles
Mhm.
is potentially saving you the cost of having the entire building sheeted.
Right, but and this goes back to what I was saying before. At least it seems like insurance companies aren't recognizing any of that. They're just saying new roof or no insurance.
Correct.
Right. And so if you can't insure a building, you can't really operate a business out of it, and therefore it becomes virtually useless. If it's for that, for instance, a building that wants to operate a business out of it, if you can't insure it, you really can't live in it, right, either. Like you need your buildings insured. So it's like
And honestly, I don't expect us to come to any sort of a resolution this evening. We were just workshopping some items, but we had mentioned at the last meeting, it may be wise possibly to have a insurance representative come and speak to us about what would not be acceptable. I know Mr. Angelo's tried to reach out to a few of the local insurers and has not yet gotten a commitment.
yeah, it'd be nice to know if there was loopholes or some sort of tricks when it comes to historic,
They wanted
districts.
me to replace my tin tile roof. I hired a painter. I had it completely repainted to the specifications in the Secretary of the Interior standards and the NPS preservation briefs. It was a different time back then. I mean, this is 9 years ago.
Mhm.
I sent all the documentation in showing that the roof had been brought back to standard, and they reinstated my policy. A lot's happened in 9 years, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, most of the things that made me bring it up as a topic has been like the last 2 or 3 years, really. They're getting intense.
So I think, as I said, I don't have a section on resolution here, and obviously we don't vote on things under workshop, but hopefully I gave you guys a better idea of maintenance, minor, major, and the differing things that each of those triggers. I hope each of you takes the opportunity to read through the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines and standards to see examples of what is recommended versus non-recommended treatments. At some point, either through consultation with insurance companies or the department asking for guidance from city attorneys, as a board and as a land development administrator, goes back to what Mr. Carter just said. What is the definition we should adopt for a, quote, comparable, compatible substitute material? Are we in a position where our hands are tied and we need to just start rubber stamping Galvalume for all of the old metal buildings in town? Is there, as Mr. Carter said, is there a way around this that will satisfy the insurance as well as the barristers as it relates to this issue? And, we have quite possibly on the horizon, especially when the new edition of Florida Building Code comes out following this hurricane season, are we gonna have to start, even though the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines say these are not recommended treatments, are we gonna have to start rubber stamping non-recommended treatments just because it's the only way our residents and our businesses can continue to operate within the historic structures that they own? So, food for thought. If anyone else have anything they want to throw out there, I said I'd try to get you out of here by 6:45, and
You failed. Thanks a lot.
we're close. And that clock's a couple minutes fast.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, we've got 3 seconds.
Sweet. Is there anything else in particular anyone wants to ask, or do you want to have a chance to review some of these documents, talk it over with some folks in the industry, maybe talk with Robert, figure it out? This was just a little bit extra education for the board that.
It was nice, thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we keep doing things like
I'm
this
really
here.
grateful to see old houses get renovated.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of houses that need it, and I'm excited when every single homeowner comes to us
Sure.
with the care that they're doing, and I'm not such a stickler about it as certain other people are who remain nameless. I'm just glad to get it renovated.
Yeah, that's a
I
big
don't have a
part.
problem
Yeah.
with it.
That's a big part of it. I
Totally
think, I agree. Not that I don't see the value in what other folks may see value in, but, but I do like, I just see, and I don't know if this is relevant, like, I'm still learning, I'm young, this is the first time I've ever been on a board like this and all, but I've been doing a bunch of reading and stuff and trying to get up to, snuff as far as my knowledge on these things. I think for us, there is a great value in at least achieving uniformity in our area. If it's not all tin tiles, if every roof is the same, it's gonna look nice and clean and beautiful and it's just, people caring about the buildings enough to spend $15,000-$20,000 on a new roof is very exciting.
It is.
So,
And these are discussions we may want to have with insurance and law representatives, both of the city and outside in private practice,
Mhm.
to try to see exactly where are our buoys on this.
Mhm. Yep.
Anything else?
I'm good.
All right, well,
I will make a recommendation, maybe I'll do it too. Yeah. You reach out to maybe some place like St. Augustine that they have, steep guidelines for historic. What do they do?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there certainly are places that don't have a choice.
And they're right on the coast, their building codes are gonna be.
I don't want us to be like an HOA where we're telling people what color you can use.
No, we don't wanna go that.
I don't want to
go
be like that.
Yeah.
You have to, if it's tin tile, you have to have tin tile. It's impossible.
Yeah.
They're renovating the house, that's a real plus for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's gonna look clean. I don't have a huge problem with it. That's where I am.
anything else? All right, well, I'll come down off this podium, get back on that rostrum, and we'll get adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6:47.
Not too shabby.
That was good. There being no further business before this board, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Make a motion.
Second.
I think we had a McMahon and Miss Mary down at the end there on the second. Just barely beat you.
That's all.
All right, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?